In a tree-lined Charleston neighborhood where porch swings creaked in the humid air, Evelyn Reed, a woman known more for her pristine white Lexus RX than her neighborly warmth, repeatedly used Arthur Pendleton's driveway as her personal parking spot. Arthur, a man who found solace in the predictable rhythm of his life, initially met her casual boundary crossing with polite requests, which were brushed off with saccharine smiles and flimsy excuses. But patience has its limits. When Arthur finally drew a line, enforcing his right to his own space by having her car towed, it wasn't just about asphalt. It was a clash of entitlement versus respect that rippled through the quiet streets, leaving Evelyn to eventually regret every dismissive wave and every inch of concrete shed claimed as her own. Arthur Pendleton lived by structure, not the rigid kind, but the comforting, lived-in structure of a life built on routine and a deep appreciation for order. At 45, he navigated the often chaotic world of high school mathematics at Charleston Central High, finding satisfaction in bringing clarity to complex equations. His job demanded patience and precision, qualities he carried home to his sanctuary, a tidy, single-story brick house on a peaceful lane. His home was modest, but meticulously kept. The hedges were trimmed, the porch swept daily, and the small lawn was a patch of deep green perfection. A single-car driveway, just wide enough for his reliable Toyota Camry, led to his garage. No gates, no grand displays, just a clearly defined space that was unequivocally his. In a world of variables, his home was a constant, a place where order prevailed. The ritual of returning home, shoes off by the door, keys in the ceramic bowl, a deep breath of quiet air, was sacred. So, when he turned onto his street one Wednesday afternoon and found a gleaming white Lexus RX parked squarely in the middle of his driveway, his first emotion wasn't anger, but a jarring sense of dissonance. He paused, blinking. The car looked expensive, out of place, angled slightly as if parked in haste by someone unconcerned with precision. No driver, no note, just the silent occupation of his space. Arthur parked at the curb, his gaze drifting to the house next door, the one with the perfectly arranged planter boxes and the professionally landscaped garden. Evelyn Reed's place. Shed moved in about 8 months prior, a whirlwind of tailored suits, loud phone calls, and an air of perpetual importance. She worked in public relations, traveled frequently, and offered brief, tight-lipped nods in passing. They weren't friends. They barely registered as acquaintances. Mistakes happen, Arthur reasoned. A delivery mix-up? A visitor confused? He decided to let it slide. This once. The Lexus was gone by morning. For a week, then 2. The driveway remained clear. Arthur slipped back into his rhythm, the incident fading. But then, inevitably, it happened again. Pulling in after a long faculty meeting, he saw it. The same white Lexus, same spot, same casual disregard. This time, he didn't ignore it. He walked over, and knocked on Evelyn's door. When she opened it, wearing expensive loungewear and holding a tablet, her expression was one of practiced surprise. "Oh, that," she said, a light, airy tone that didn't quite mask an edge of impatience. "So sorry, Arthur. My usual spot was blocked by the landscapers next door. Just needed somewhere quick." "I figured you wouldn't mind." The way she said his name felt dismissive, almost patronizing. He did mind. "I'd appreciate it if you didn't use my driveway, Evelyn," he stated calmly, keeping his voice even. She waved a hand dismissively, the gesture quick and final. "Of course. Absolutely. No problem at all." But her eyes said something different, a flicker of annoyance, suggesting he was the one being unreasonable. And so, the steady rhythm of Arthur Pendleton's life was disturbed, not by overt conflict, but by the creeping vine of entitlement. It was just a car in a driveway, but it represented a line drawn in the sand, a line Arthur didn't yet know would be crossed repeatedly, forcing him to push back. Arthur initially tried to rationalize it. Perhaps she was forgetful, perhaps genuinely inconvenienced. But as the white Lexus became a recurring feature in his driveway the following week and the week after, those rationalizations evaporated. Evelyn Reed hadn't made a mistake. She'd established a pattern. She no longer bothered with even the pretense of asking. It wasn't just the disrespect. It was the casual assumption, the way she treated his property as an overflow lot, a convenience afforded by living next to someone seemingly too polite to make a fuss. Each time, a new excuse, wafer thin and delivered with that bright, insincere smile. "Just running in for a minute," she'd call, already halfway to her door, clutching designer shopping bags. "Thought you were out," or "My guest couldn't find street parking." Her tone brooked no argument, coated in a veneer of breezy condescension. Arthur, by nature non-confrontational, tried maintaining civility. But repetition erodes patience. Polite notes left under her wiper vanished without comment. Knocks on her door often went unanswered, even when music or voices could be heard inside. One evening, arriving home later than usual after chaperoning a school dance, he found not only her Lexus blocking his garage, but also a sleek black Mercedes parked haphazardly behind it, effectively trapping his own car out on the street. That was it. The line hadn't just been crossed. It had been obliterated. Arthur parked, took a deep breath, and pulled out his phone. He documented everything. Timestamps, license plates, wide shots, showing both cars completely obstructing his access. Then, he walked purposefully to Evelyn's door and knocked firmly. She opened it, a wine glass in hand, her expression already hardening. "Arthur," she sighed, drawing out his name as if it were a chore. "What is it now?" He gestured towards the driveway. "Whose car is that?" Her eyes flickered towards the Mercedes. "Oh, that's Fiona's. We're just having a quick brainstorming session. Didn't think you'd be back so soon." "It matters, Evelyn," Arthur said, his voice quiet but firm. "It matters every single time. This is my property. You need to move them now. Her eyebrows arched. Really? Are we doing this again? It's just parking. It's not just parking, he countered, refusing to raise his voice. It's constant. It's disrespectful. It's my driveway. She gave a short, sharp laugh. You know, she said, taking a pointed sip of wine. A simple heads up earlier would have been appreciated. No need for the drama. Drama. The word stung. He felt a flush of anger, but held it in check. I'm telling you now. Move the cars. She rolled her eyes dramatically. Fine, fine, don't get worked up. She retreated inside, calling over her shoulder, We'll be out in a bit. 15 minutes crawled by. 20. Nothing changed. Arthur stood on the sidewalk, aware of curtains twitching across the street. He hated being the center of attention, but the quiet standoff, the blatant disregard, had created the scene, not him. Finally, Evelyn's friend emerged, slid into the Mercedes, and drove off without a word or glance in his direction. Evelyn's Lexus remained. Arthur stood there, shoulders tight, the cool night air doing little to quell his frustration. This wasn't ending. The next morning, Arthur skipped his usual coffee ritual. He sat at his kitchen table and researched local towing companies. Then, he found a sturdy piece of cardboard and, with a thick black marker, wrote in clear block letters, Private property. Do not park here. Violators will be towed at owner's expense. He propped it visibly at the end of his driveway before leaving for work. That evening, the sign was gone, and the white Lexus was back, parked with an almost defiant angle directly in the center of his driveway. Arthur looked at the car, then at Evelyn's house, lights blazing, oblivious. It wasn't confusion anymore. It wasn't oversight. It was a deliberate challenge. He pulled out his phone, found the number he'd saved earlier, and made the call. The first tow truck arrived with surprising speed. The driver, efficient and unsmiling, hooked up the Lexus RX with practiced ease. Just as the hydraulics whined, Evelyn burst out of her house, phone pressed to her ear, mid-conversation. What on earth do you think you're doing? She demanded, her voice sharp, directed at the driver, but her eyes blazing at Arthur, who stood calmly on his porch. Ma'am, this is a private property tow, requested by the homeowner, the driver stated flatly. You can't just tow my car. Arthur, stop this, she shrieked. Arthur simply met her gaze. I asked you repeatedly not to park here, Evelyn. I even put up a sign. This is insane. It was just for an hour, she yelled, gesturing wildly as the truck carefully pulled her car onto the flatbed. You'll be hearing from my lawyer? She shouted as the truck drove away. Arthur expected that to be the end of the parking issue. He was wrong. The battle shifted tactics. First came the anonymous notes slipped into his mailbox. Neatly typed messages about neighborly consideration and the importance of community harmony, subtly painting him as the aggressor. Then came the official complaints. A notice from the city about his recycling bins being left out 2 hours past the designated time. An HOA warning regarding the height of the jasmine vine on his fence. A citation for weeds in the sidewalk cracks in front of his house, cracks that ran the length of the block. Each complaint was petty, targeted, and clearly orchestrated. Arthur documented them all, took photos, saved the letters, noted the dates. He didn't retaliate. He compiled evidence. The following Saturday afternoon arrived bright and warm. Arthur was setting up for a small barbecue. Just his sister, her husband, and their kids. He looked forward to these simple family gatherings. The easy laughter, the smell of grilling burgers, the sound of his niece and nephew playing in the yard. He'd just finished arranging chairs on the patio when he turned towards the driveway and froze. There it was. The white Lexus RX, parked dead center, angled perfectly to block not just his driveway, but access to his garage entirely. It was a blatant, deliberate act of defiance. Music and laughter drifted from Evelyn's backyard. She was hosting some sort of brunch, clearly visible through the gap in her fence. Chatting animatedly with guests, wineglass in hand. She knew exactly what she was doing. Arthur didn't hesitate. He didn't yell. He didn't confront. He pulled out his phone and dialed the towing company again. "Arthur Pendleton," he said, his voice calm and steady. "Same address, same white Lexus." "Yes." Blocking the driveway completely. The tow truck arrived within 20 minutes, its yellow lights flashing. Arthur sat in one of his patio chairs, sipping iced tea, watching the process unfold as if it were a routine municipal service. This time, Evelyn's reaction was immediate and volcanic. "Are you kidding me?" she screamed, storming out of her backyard gate, followed by a few curious guests. "You are towing my car again?" Neighbors emerged onto their porches. Curtains twitched. Mrs. Gable, the elderly woman from 2 doors down, known for her sharp wit, leaned over her railing with keen interest. "You parked in my driveway again, Evelyn," Arthur stated simply, not moving from his chair. "I had guests." "There was no street parking," she retorted, her voice rising. She turned to the tow truck driver. "Don't you touch my car. This is harassment." The driver ignored her, continuing to secure the vehicle. "Mom, please step back. You're interfering." Evelyn whirled back to Arthur, her face flushed. "You are the most petty, vindictive man I have ever met. You could have just knocked." Arthur took a slow sip of his tea. "We've had that conversation before, Evelyn. It didn't change anything." Across the street, a teenager casually started recording the scene on his phone. "Oh, great! Now you're making a public spectacle!" Evelyn shrieked, noticing the phone. "Honey, you're the spectacle," Mrs. Gable called out dryly. "Happens every time you decide the rules don't apply to you." Evelyn looked stunned, momentarily speechless. She turned to Arthur, her voice trembling with rage. "You are going to regret this, Arthur Pendleton. You have started a war." Arthur finally stood up, walked calmly to the edge of his patio. He didn't raise his voice. "No, Evelyn," he said, his tone low, but carrying clear across the yards. "You started this the moment you decided my property was yours for the taking. This isn't war. This is the consequence. The tow truck rumbled to life, pulling away with the Lexus secured on its bed for the second time. Evelyn stood frozen, watching it go, her guests shifting uncomfortably behind her. She scanned the street, the watching neighbors, the recording phone. She saw no support, only quiet observation. As Arthur's family began to arrive, their cars easily pulling into the now clear driveway, laughter filling the air, Evelyn remained rooted at the edge of her perfect lawn, utterly alone in the spotlight she had inadvertently created. The neighborhood had seen it all. By Monday, the neighborhood was buzzing, not with loud gossip, but with the quiet, knowing exchanges typical of Charlestonians. The video, aptly titled Driveway Drama Part 2, had circulated through the neighborhood Facebook group and email chains. It showed Evelyn's meltdown in stark contrast to Arthur's calm composure. The narrative was clear, but Evelyn wasn't one to retreat quietly. She doubled down. An email landed in every neighbor's inbox. Subject: fostering respect and understanding in our community. It was a masterclass in passive aggression, vaguely referencing certain individuals who chose punitive actions over neighborly dialogue and how egos were damaging community spirit. She painted herself as a misunderstood victim. Next came laminated flyers taped to mailboxes. "Do we want to live in fear of our neighbors?" the headline screamed in bold italics, followed by paragraphs about unity, accountability, and the supposed injustice she had suffered. Arthur read his copy, chuckled softly, and tossed it in the recycling bin. She was trying to spin the story, but the audience had already seen the raw footage. His phone lit up with messages of support. "About time someone stood up to her," one neighbor texted. "She reported my wind chimes last year," wrote another. "Need help funding the next tow?" joked a third. Evelyn had miscalculated. For years, her subtle intimidation and weaponized complaints had kept people quiet. But Arthur's quiet, firm stand had broken the dam. People weren't just annoyed, they felt emboldened. The breaking point came at the next monthly HOA meeting. Arthur attended, a first for him, taking a seat near the front. Evelyn was there, flanked by two friends who nodded emphatically at her whispers. When the floor opened for resident concerns, a board member cleared his throat. "We've received several communications regarding ongoing disputes and what some perceive as targeted harassment," he began neutrally. "Specifically, these involve Ms. Evelyn Reed." A palpable shift occurred in the room. Evelyn sat bolt upright. "Excuse me," she interjected, attempting indignation. Before she could continue, Mrs. Gable stood up. "She's been filing complaints for years," she stated plainly. "My garden gnomes apparently lowered property values." Another resident spoke. "She sent me a formal warning because my son's basketball hoop was visible from the street. My holiday lights were excessive," added someone else. One by one, neighbors shared their own stories of Evelyn's petty tyrannies. Her carefully constructed victim narrative crumbled under the weight of collective experience. "This is absurd. A witch hunt," Evelyn protested, her voice tight. And the one being harassed, my car towed twice. You repeatedly parked on private property after being asked not to, Ms. Reed, the board member said calmly. That's not harassment. It's facing the consequences of your actions. The room was quiet, but the silence was heavy with agreement. Evelyn looked around, searching for an ally, finding none. The nods she usually received were gone, replaced by neutral or disapproving expressions. Her power, built on bluff and intimidation, had evaporated. 2 days later, the white Lexus RX disappeared from the street for good. By the end of the week, a for sale sign stood starkly on Evelyn Reed's immaculate lawn. She moved out swiftly, quietly, without fanfare or farewells. No one offered casseroles. No one waved goodbye. Arthur watched the moving truck pull away, a mug of coffee warming his hands. He felt no triumph, only a profound sense of relief, like a persistent tension finally easing from his shoulders. It had never been about winning. It had been about reclaiming his peace, his boundaries, his small, ordered corner of the world. The neighborhood breathed easier. People lingered longer on their porches, waved more freely. Mrs. Gable invited Arthur for iced tea. You showed admirable restraint, young man, she declared. Arthur knew the quiet standoff wasn't just about a driveway. It was about the simple, powerful act of standing firm, respectfully but resolutely, against entitlement. Evelyn Reed had learned the hard way that some lines cannot be crossed indefinitely. When the bluff is called, sometimes all that's left is the silence and an empty driveway.